Something just happened that has people around the world asking questions. A world leader just stood in front of cameras and said 3 words that sent shockwaves through the internet. 3 words that used to get people labeled as crazy. 3 words that were supposed to be nothing but a conspiracy theory. New World Order. And he didn't whisper it. He didn't hide it. He said it loud and clear for everyone to hear. Now, here's the thing. This isn't some random politician from some small country nobody's ever heard of. This is the leader of a major Western nation, standing right next to one of the most powerful leaders on the planet. And what he said next is even more disturbing, because it lines up with something that was written thousands of years ago, something that many people believe is about to happen. Now, here's what most people don't realize. For decades, there's been talk about something called the New World Order. And for most of that time, anyone who mentioned it was called crazy. They were called conspiracy theorists. They were told to put on their tinfoil hats and stop watching so many movies. But that was then. Something has shifted. Something big. And it's happening right now in plain sight. See, the idea behind the New World Order is pretty simple. It's the belief that major nations around the world are working together, not just working together on trade deals or climate agreements, but working together to eventually create one single government, one system, one ruler. Now that sounds extreme. It sounds like something out of a dystopian novel. But here's the thing that nobody can ignore anymore. World leaders are starting to say it themselves. They're not hiding behind closed doors. They're not speaking in code. They're standing in front of cameras and using those exact words. New World Order. And they're saying it like it's a good thing, like it's the plan all along. And this isn't happening in some far-off country that most people can't find on a map. This is happening in Western nations. Nations that are supposed to be allies of the United States. Nations that share the same values, the same beliefs. But something has changed. Alliances are shifting, old friends are becoming distant, and new partnerships are forming that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. And what's really strange is that all of this was predicted a long time ago, in a book that billions of people around the world still read today. But we'll get to that in a moment. First, you need to see what just happened. So here's what went down. The Prime Minister of Canada just made a visit to China. Now, that alone might not sound like breaking news. Leaders visit other countries all the time. It's part of the job. But this visit was different. This was the first time a Canadian leader had visited China in 8 years. 8 years. Think about that for a second. For almost a decade, there was tension. There was distance. The relationship between these two countries was cold. And then, suddenly, everything changed. The Prime Minister shows up in Beijing. He meets with the Chinese president. And the two of them start talking about a new partnership, a new direction, a reset in the relationship. Okay, so far, this could just be normal diplomacy. Countries patch things up all the time. Nothing too unusual. But then he said something that made people stop in their tracks. He said that this new partnership with China sets Canada up well for the New World Order. Those exact words, New World Order. Now, this isn't some random phrase that got taken out of context. This isn't a slip of the tongue. This was a deliberate statement made during an official diplomatic meeting, on camera, for the world to see. And he didn't apologize for it. He didn't walk it back. He said it like it was the goal all along. So let's think about what this really means. A major Western nation, a neighbor and ally of the United States, is now openly talking about positioning itself for a new world order. And it's doing this by partnering with China. This is massive. This is a complete shift in global politics happening right before our eyes. But here's what makes this even more concerning. Canada isn't the only one. This is part of a much bigger pattern. A pattern that involves some of the most powerful nations on the planet. And it gets even stranger when you look at what's been written about this thousands of years ago. Now, let's connect some dots here. What's happening with Canada and China isn't happening in isolation. There's a much bigger picture that most people aren't seeing. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Right now, there's a group of nations that are coming together. They call themselves BRICS. That stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But it's grown way beyond those 5 countries now. More and more nations are joining this alliance. I said they're creating their own systems, their own ways of doing trade, their own financial networks. And here's what's really interesting. When you add up the population of all these BRICS nations, you get something staggering. We're talking about billions of people. Billions! That's a significant portion of the entire world's population, all working together under one system. Now, think about that for a moment. For years, people wondered how certain predictions could ever come true. Predictions about massive armies, predictions about nations combining forces, predictions about a unified global power. And the answer was always the same. It seemed impossible. No single nation has that kind of power. No single country could control that many people. But what if it's not a single nation? What if it's multiple nations coming together, combining their resources, combining their militaries, combining their populations into one massive force? Suddenly, those old predictions don't seem so impossible anymore. And here's where it gets really concerning. The nations that are coming together right now are not exactly friendly with certain parts of the world. They have their own agenda, their own goals, and those goals might not align with what most people in the West believe in. We're watching alliances form that could reshape the entire world order, and it's happening fast, faster than most people realize. But this is still just part of the story, because there's another element that ties all of this together, an element that goes back thousands of years. And when you see the connection, it's going to make you look at everything differently. Okay, here's where things take a turn. Everything we've talked about so far has been about politics, world leaders, alliances, global shifts in power. But there's another layer to this story, a layer that most news channels won't touch, a layer that goes deeper than any political analysis. What if all of this was already written down? What if someone described exactly what we're seeing today, but they did it thousands of years before it happened? Now, a lot of people are going to dismiss this right away. They're going to say it's just coincidence. They're going to say people are reading too much into things. But here's the problem with that argument. The details are too specific. The patterns are too clear. And they're lining up in ways that are getting harder and harder to ignore. Ancient texts talk about a time when the nations of the world would come together. They talk about a single government, a single ruler, a single system that would control everything from buying to selling. Sound familiar? They talk about kingdoms combining their power, about authority being handed over to one leader, about a system that would have control over every tribe, every nation, every language on earth. And here's what's really strange. These texts also talk about specific signs, signs that would appear before all of this happens. Natural signs, political signs, signs in the water, signs in the land, signs in the relationships between nations. And right now, in this very moment, many of those signs are appearing. This isn't about fear. This isn't about panic. This is about paying attention. Because what's happening in the world today is matching up with what was written a very long time ago. And the next part of this story is going to show you exactly how. Let's talk about what these ancient texts actually say. There are passages that describe a beast. Now, this isn't talking about a literal animal. This is symbolic language for a powerful ruler, a ruler who would have authority over all nations, all tribes, all languages, all people, one government, one system, one leader. And this leader doesn't come to power through force alone. According to these texts, other rulers actually hand over their power willingly. They choose to give their authority to this one person. Think about what we just discussed, with world leaders openly talking about a new world order. Think about nations coming together into larger and larger alliances. The pieces are moving right in front of us. But there's more. These same texts describe a system where no one can buy or sell anything unless they have a certain mark. A mark that would be required for every transaction, every purchase, every sale. Now, for centuries, people read that and had no idea how such a thing could be possible. How could you possibly control every transaction in the entire world? But today we have technology that makes this not only possible but practical. We have digital currencies. We have implantable chips. We have brain interfaces that can read and even alter human thought. And here's what's really wild. Some of these technologies are already being tested right now. Companies are putting chips in people's hands. Companies are developing brain implants that connect humans to computers. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is happening. And when you read these ancient warnings about a mark that would be required for buying and selling, and then you look at what technology companies are developing today, the connection becomes very, very clear. But wait, there's still more to this story, because there's another set of predictions that are coming true right now, and these ones involve specific nations, specific conflicts, and they're happening in real time. Now, let's look at something that's been unfolding for years. Ancient texts talk about a major peace agreement, a 7-year deal involving a specific nation in the Middle East. And according to these writings, this peace deal is a major sign, a sign that big changes are coming. And here's where it gets interesting. There have been major peace agreements made in recent years, deals that brought together nations that had been enemies for decades, deals that seemed impossible just a few years before they happened. But according to these ancient texts, there's a twist. The peace doesn't last. Somewhere around the middle of the agreement, things fall apart. The deal gets broken. And what comes after is far worse than what came before. Now, we don't know for certain which specific agreement fulfills this prediction, but the fact that we're seeing these kinds of deals being made right now is significant. And that's not the only thing happening. These same texts mention specific regions that would come together to form a great army. And some researchers believe these regions correspond to modern nations. One region often discussed is what ancient texts call Gog and Magog. Many scholars believe this refers to territories that include modern-day Russia, and Persia, which is mentioned as an ally, is what we now call Iran. Look at the headlines today. Russia and Iran have been strengthening their relationship. They've been working together on military operations. They've been forming the exact kind of alliance these ancient texts describe. Coincidence? Maybe. But when you start adding up all these coincidences, the list gets very, very long. Peace deals in the Middle East, rising alliances between specific nations, world leaders openly talking about a new world order, technology that could fulfill predictions about marking people for buying and selling. Each one of these by itself could be dismissed, but together they form a pattern that's hard to ignore. And there's still more happening right now. Things in nature that are matching ancient predictions. Let's talk about what's happening in the natural world. Ancient texts describe signs that would appear in nature. Signs involving water, signs involving the land, signs that would be impossible to miss. And just recently, strange things have been happening. Bodies of water have been turning unusual colors. Rivers that have flowed for thousands of years are drying up. The Euphrates River, which is specifically mentioned in ancient texts, has been losing water at an alarming rate. Reports say it's at historically low levels. For the very first time in recorded history, this ancient river is going dry. But that's not all. There are reports of deserts experiencing unusual weather, snow falling in places that have never seen snow, water appearing in lands that have been dry for as long as anyone can remember. Dry wastelands starting to show signs of green vegetation. Now, some people will explain all of this with climate change. Others will point to natural cycles, and those explanations might have some truth to them. But here's the thing. When ancient texts specifically predict that rivers will dry up, that deserts will bloom, that the natural order of things will shift in dramatic ways, and then those exact things start happening, it's worth paying attention. These aren't vague predictions that could mean anything. These are specific descriptions of specific events, and they're happening right now. Water turning colors, rivers drying up, deserts changing, alliances forming between specific nations. Aren't world leaders openly discussing a new global order? Every piece of this puzzle is falling into place. And the question that everyone should be asking is simple. What comes next? Because according to these ancient texts, what comes next is the part that changes everything. So where does all of this leave us? Let's be clear about something. No one knows exactly when or how everything will unfold. These ancient texts give signs and warnings, but they don't give specific dates on a calendar. What we can see is that the pieces are moving. World leaders are openly discussing concepts that were dismissed as conspiracy theories just a few years ago. Technology is advancing in ways that make ancient predictions about buying and selling suddenly seem very real. Alliances are forming that match patterns described thousands of years ago. Where natural events are occurring that line up with specific warnings. This isn't about causing fear. This isn't about panic. This is about awareness. Because here's what many people don't realize. These same texts that warn about what's coming also provide guidance. They talk about what to do, how to prepare, how to stay grounded when the world around you seems to be shifting. And the message isn't complicated. It's about staying alert. It's about not being caught off guard. It's about understanding what's happening so you're not confused when things accelerate, because things are accelerating. Even 5 years ago, the idea of a world leader openly saying New World Order would have been shocking. Today, it's being said on camera during official diplomatic meetings. The window is closing. Whatever someone believes about these ancient texts, what cannot be denied is that the world is changing fast, and the direction it's heading matches patterns that were described a very long time ago. The question isn't whether things are happening. The question is, what are you going to do about it? And there's one more thing you need to know, something that's just starting to come to light. Here's what most people are missing. Everything we've discussed today is connected. The political shifts, the technological advances, the natural signs, the ancient predictions. They're not separate stories. They're all part of one massive unfolding event, and we're living right in the middle of it. But there's something else, something that hasn't been fully revealed yet, something that's starting to emerge from behind closed doors. Because while everyone is focused on what's being said in public, there are meetings happening in private, discussions that aren't being broadcast on the news, plans that are being made right now that will affect every single person on this planet. And the information that's starting to leak out is unlike anything we've seen before. New alliances, new technologies, new systems that are being prepared for launch. What's coming next is going to make everything we've discussed today look like just the beginning. The world is changing faster than most people realize. And by the time the majority of people wake up to what's happening, it might already be too late to prepare. The signs are everywhere. The question is whether we're paying attention, because what happens next